Hey, money actors. I came across this chart that I thought was really interesting, and I listened to a lot of financial YouTube videos and podcasts. And I've thought this was super interesting because I haven't heard anyone say anything about this. We have actually paid down our debt in GDP terms. So here we are in 2020. We're at 130, almost 133% debt to GDP ratios. We have never been this high in US history. This is really bad. Typically, a government wants to stay at under 60% to maximize what dollars you take in from taxpayers and dollars that go out as working capital. But that's another story. Somehow, we have come from 132% debt to GDP down to today, roughly around 120%. And this is early 2024, so not necessarily today. But this is where the chart goes, Federal Reserve chart. And how is it possible that we have actually gone further into debt by record amounts and the fastest pace ever under Joe Biden, who just beat the previous person to make the record, which was Trump, to beat the previous person, which was Biden, to beat the previous person, which was Bush. They get worse and worse and worse as we go. So how is it that we've gone into record debt? This says 34 trillion. We actually just hit 36 trillion. So how is it that we're at 36 trillion? We've gone into record debt. We have like $2 to $3 trillion deficits every year that we actually go further into debt, and yet somehow our debt to GDP has gone down. Well, the answer is the hidden tax on everyone, which is inflation. So first, we're going to see that, yes, this was the previous record that we hit, which was roughly around 120%. Some charts have said 106%, but I've mostly heard it's actually 120%. Debt to GDP in post-World War II, or around World War II. The difference from back then to now is that we were the richest country in the world. We had 20,000 tons of gold, the most gold in the world. We actually it was a Bretton Woods Accord in 1944, around here, when we basically said the US dollar is the world reserve currency, and it is exchangeable with $35 per ounce of gold. And the reason we were able to pay this off was inflation. So FDR around this time made it illegal for US citizens to own gold. So he confiscated the gold, but paid everybody $25 an ounce, and then deemed the price $35 an ounce. So inflation shot up to pay off the debt here. Then we went from 20,000 tons of gold down to 8,000 tons of gold, while inflation ate away at the rest, because remember, we were still going to war and blowing tons of money. This is around when we defaulted on our debt in 1971, took the US dollar off the gold standard, said we're no longer going to exchange gold for dollars. A lot of stuff happened I won't go into. It's another video. There's a lot of things that basically why the world accepted our US dollars as reserve currency still, even though we defaulted on our debt. And now we ended up hitting this peak of 132% debt to GDP, brought it back down to World War II numbers. Only this time, we don't have the factories to pay things off. We don't have the gold to pay things off. So what are we going to do? And that is inflate the debt away. The problem is you get into this cycle of spending more money to create more inflation, to bring that down, but that causes a lot of pain. It's really painful, as we've all seen, where I've been looking at cars recently, and my last car I bought in 2018, and that same car is about double the price today. It's crazy. There's a lot of sticker shock going on right now. Housing prices have skyrocketed. Of course, this is the official inflation that they tell you, which peaked in 2022 to start paying that debt off to GDP, even though they're blowing more money, at 9% supposedly. But this is goosed numbers because they don't include food, energy, and the roof over your head, which are the most important things. They threw that out. And we all know that stuff doubled in price. So that's, in some cases, it's like 100%. And actually, if you go to shadow statistics, you can see The real inflation rate, when you include all those things, was actually somewhere around, you can roughly tell, it's somewhere around 18%, 17.5%. So that was the real inflation rate, which is actually worse than the 70s, as you can see here. And the 70s was like where the dollar lost a ton of its value back then, as we were weaning ourselves off the gold standard and had to turn into the petrodollar. And so you can actually see that this is the exact reason why governments love inflation. They claim they don't, but they love it because it means they can dupe you. I just actually saw Facebook posts from people like, look at these numbers, like we're actually making more money. Not really, because when you actually look at how much worse off you are with real wages, sure, your wages have gone up, which is part of that inflation loop cycle that's really hard to get out of. But the real wage, because those dollars don't purchase what they used to. So yeah, your wage may have gone up, but your purchasing power has actually gone down because all those things cost way more money. So this is something that people just you don't see that trickery that government does when they inflate away the debt. That's why I'm really hopeful, and I know it's going to be impossible probably, but I'm really hopeful for what Elon Musk and Vivek do, because what we need to do is be honest with people and make some really hard cuts, because it's better to have hard cuts now that we deal with in a controlled manner. And in my last video, I showed how in a controlled manner, like a mountaineer goes, you see this mountain, this avalanche of snowpack that's going to bury the city. And a mountaineer goes in and causes controlled explosions to make sure that the damage is a lot less than if you just let it go out of control and do whatever nature does and just smash it to pieces. If we go in and do it in a controlled way, because we've let it go out of control this much, it will still be incredibly painful. We should have dealt with this 20 years ago when it was getting out of control at around, 10 trillion when Obama started blowing things up. Actually, Bush started blowing things up. Then Obama just took it to the stratosphere. We should have dealt with it back then. We didn't. We got to start dealing with it sometime. That's why I'm excited about what Elon and Vivek are hoping to do. Let's see if they can get past, the congressmen who want to get voted in next term, even though they're Republican too. I don't know. Vivek says he can do it. I hope he's right, but we'll see. Because I personally don't want Social Security. I think it's been a massive waste. I'm never going to get back what I put into it because they never saved any of that money. That supposed trust fund is full of IOUs because we're 36 trillion in debt. And if you look at what you get as like when you collect unemployment, you put all this money in years and years and years, and then you get to collect for this certain period of time, this tiny amount. I collected it last year and it was like, didn't even cover half my rent. It's a joke. You may as well just let me keep that money and I'll invest it. And so I personally would just like to see people 50 years and younger, you're not going to get it. We're going to just keep it going and to pay off, to let the older folks who can't, make those adjustments, let it just slowly fade out. Same with Medicare and Medicaid, useless. Let's go back to a real free market system when we actually had affordable health care, not this abomination from Obama himself that then Trump made even worse when he was in office last time. We got to go back to free market, not this fascism. People say fascist, and they think of Nazis. Fascism is when government is in bed with corporations. That's what we have today. We need free market. That's what created the most wealthy country in the world, the United States. Now we're the most indebted, poorest country in the world. But, the poorest person in the world that has record amounts of debt, that still has a credit card, seems like they're rich. They're not. Eventually, the devil comes to get his due. So anyway, I hope this was informative for you, because this was enlightening. When I saw that chart, I was like, oh my gosh, this is clearly what they're doing right now. So please subscribe, like, and I'll see you next time.